Today's topic is moral science for engineers. Now, the first question while getting into the topic is that why at all moral science for engineers is implied so much? It's because engineers have crucial functions in maintaining public safety, human life. They are also responsible for ethical decision making in complex situations. They also have environmental responsibility, social responsibility, professional integrity, and technology without ethical guidelines is dangerous. They also have certain legal and professional obligations. They are also responsible for innovations, for creating environments which are not only inclusive but also socially beneficial as well as sustainable. So, for all of the reasons, engineers do have to employ ethics or moral science, which will not just build machines and systems, but rather they would also shape human lives. They will ensure a better society, safety, environment, and a more enriched future for all. Going into the topic, we will be first focusing on the introduction. The introduction entails what we do we understand by the term ethics. Now, as you can see, etymologically, the term ethics corresponds to the Greek word ethos, which means character, habit, customs, ways of behavior, etc. Ethics is also called moral philosophy. The word moral comes from Latin word mors, which signifies customs, character, behavior, etc. Thus, ethics may be defined as the systematic study of human actions from the point of view of their rightfulness or wrongfulness as means for the attainment of the ultimate happiness. Now, as a philosophical discipline, ethics is the study of values and guidelines by which we live. Ethics is a science in as much as it is a set of body of reasoned truths organized in a logical order and having its specific material and formal objects. With that, some other things that we also need to look into is that ethics is also theoretical and practical. Ethics is sometimes distinguished from morality, which we will get on with later in our later slides. Next, ethics is not merely a set of codes. Ethics certainly deals with moral codes, of course, yet one cannot identify ethics to moral codes completely. Ethics deal with voluntary actions. So, in order to understand that where is the overlap between what we call ethics and what we call morality, this slide might be helpful. So, ethics is like it denotes a collection of moral principles, rules, guidelines that regulate conduct within a specific community. But on the contrary, if we see, morality constitutes a framework of moral values and principles that individuals employ to assess the rightness or wrongness of their actions and the action of others. So, if you if you may be mindful of this fact, you will understand that there is a particular there is a particular place of um, interconnection of how ethics and morality can be interconnected. Morality basically serves as your personal belief system that will shape your ethical choices. Individuals make, of course, the ethical choices, so their personal belief system will be shaping their ethical choices. So, ethics, on the other hand, is basically your potential to mold or change or influence your individual moral convictions. How can we strike a difference between what is ethics and what is morality? Firstly, to be very precise, ethics is a methodical or a methodological or a very systematic and organized approach to moral decision making and behavior, while morality is a personal and individualistic approach to ethics. So there is a matter of individualism or subjectivity when we come to morality. It's like you morally do not want to do something, but ethically you have to do that something. So it's like morally you choose not to do while ethically you have to do. This is how you might make you can actually strike a difference between what we call moral or what we call ethical. All of the discussions in the previous slide as well, you see ethics deal with voluntary actions, ethics is theoretical and practical. Ethics is not just a code of conducts codes, and ethics is a systematic study of human actions from the point of view of rightfulness or wrongfulness. So all of this now makes sense. Does it make sense? Because we over here came to a very important point, that ethics is very 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 methodical, and it is very organized. It is a very organized approach to your moral decisions and moral behavior, while morality itself is very individualistic. Secondly, ethics focuses on rights and needs of others, whereas morality revolves around personal beliefs and values. So, morality takes the entire domain of someone's personal beliefs, their own values, the personal beliefs that they have developed throughout the years. They have um, actually experienced life. So, they develop morality through all of it. And ethics is something which is kind of uh, acquired later in life in various contexts. So it's like it's very context dependent. Ethics will focus on the individual rights or needs which are context dependent. So, coming to the third point, ethics constitutes a set of principles and values which are collectively agreed upon by a community. So it's like, what do we what is a community? Community is a collection of people who are sharing the let's say the same geography or the same region, etc., 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 and those who are working with the same societal systems or the social systems. So as you might now understand it clearly, that ethics are obviously agreed upon by every member of the community, because if all of the members do not agree on the ethics, it won't become ethics in the first place. So while morality on the other hand will encompass someone's personal beliefs and values that may differ among individuals. So as a community, people might have ethics regarding something, but they might on an individual level might not adhere to that. They might have something of a personal belief that they might adhere to, rather than, adhering to the ethics. But what is important is that ethics and morality both guide individual lives as well as social lives, as well as community lives, as well as the entire world society is connected, or is kind of inextricably um, interwoven through the this particular um, tuning which is done by ethics and morality. Going to some of the important classical foundations without the discussion of which the entire this particular topic is of no use actually, is that firstly we would look at what Plato and Aristotle, our classical Greek philosophers, the most celebrated ones, have thought about this, have thought about moral science or morality or ethics as a whole. So basically, Plato, through the seminal works like the Republic, has asserted that morality is rooted in the realm of ideal forms. Ideal forms. So, with the form of the good representing the ultimate standard, this notion suggests that moral behavior is aligned with an abstract, unchanging ideal. Aristotle, on the other hand, Aristotle's approach actually highlights the significance of intrinsic virtues and alignment of the human actions with their higher moral ideals, which frames ethics as a practice oriented towards the development of personal excellence and societal well being. It was actually quoted by Aristotle 2009. Uh, Immanuel Kant Immanuel Kant's philosophy is popularly called deontology. So, according to the deontological ethics articulated in the groundwork of the metaphysics of morals, propose that morality is grounded in duty and governed by the categorical imperative. Now, this imperative commands actions that can be universally applied, emphasizing rationality and autonomy. So, according to Kant 1998, his philosophy has profoundly shaped modern moral thought, underscoring the importance of universal principles and the autonomy of moral agents. The agents who are engaging in morality. So, Kant's framework asserts that moral actions are those which are performed out of a sense of duty rather than for their consequences. So, over here, we are not focusing on what will be the consequence of the particular act which is in question, according to Kant's philosophy. So, on the contrary, we'll see in utilitarianism, which was developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, is actually a consequentialist theory. What is a consequentialist theory? It is a theory which focuses on the consequences of certain actions. It will actually evaluate someone's moral thoughts, moral worth of actions based on their outcomes or consequences, particularly the maximization of overall happiness. So, Bentham's principle of utility and Mill's refinement on this particular principle, which considers qualitative differences in pleasures, provide a very pragmatic approach to morality. How is it so? Because this framework advocates for the greatest good, for the greatest number, challenging the emphasis on duty and intrinsic virtues by focusing on the result of actions. So basically, in short, the focus is on whatever is happening as a result of action. That is utilitarianism, where we see the utility of someone's actions. That is what is according to the principles which are laid down by Bentham in 2007 and Mill in 2001. Now we come to one of the most important discussions as to what is moral relativism versus what is moral universalism. Now, the terms itself might clear something, which is whenever, let's say when we talk about that torture and cruelty are wrong, or maybe killing or murdering someone is wrong, it is applicable for everyone. We are not just talking about someone specifically while stating this. Whenever we say that murder is wrong or crime is wrong or child abuse is wrong, etc., 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 so we are not targeting towards only one person, we are actually targeting towards a larger audience. So this is one of the examples which might go with moral universalism, because it considers that there is the existence of certain objective and universal moral principles that is applicable to all human beings, regardless of their cultural, societal, or individual differences. So, over here, we have two important things: objective moral standards as well as ethical consistency. So, basically, what is ethical for you will also be ethical for your friend, will also be ethical for their friend, and will also be ethical for their friends and their family, etc., etc., etc. So, it will be applicable to all living and sharing the space in the society, community, and in the world. So, that is what is about moral universalism. Now, on the contrary, what is moral relativism? It's like the right and wrong will depend on your culture, society, or your individual beliefs. So, it's like changing. Moral relativism will talk about that the moral principles are not absolute, and they are not universal. They are not applicable for all, but rather they will be context dependent. They will be culture dependent. So they will vary from one culture to another. It will vary from one society to another. It will differ individually as well. From the on the even if we focus on the individual level, it will differ on that level as well. So it focuses on two important things: cultural and individual variability, as well as subjectivity. We cannot negate both of these things while discussing about moral relativism. So, for example, if I state that polygamy is accepted in certain cultures, but it might be unacceptable in certain cultures. Or let's say, you know the how we greet someone, how we greet someone, or the space we share with someone is actually uh, it's actually considered acceptable, and this acceptable level is different from culture to culture. So in individualistic culture, as well as in western culture, sorry, in the collectivistic culture, we might strike the difference between both of the practices. So for example, in certain societies, um, uh, b- b- death rituals death rituals are morally meaningful, of course, in all cultures, but the practices differ. So a particular practice which is related to a death ritual might be moral in one culture, but it might not be moral in the other culture. However, in both the cultures, the understatement is that the death ritual is moral. We have to do that. So, uh, the choice between moral relativism and moral universalism in ethical judgments and actions, it depends on one's personal beliefs. These are very important. It depends on one's personal beliefs, cultural background, and the specific circumstances that they encounter. So, achieving a balance between recognizing diversity and upholding fundamental ethical principles is often complex and ongoing ethical challenge. So, this kind of summarizes the entire portion that is just discussed. Now, what is left to be discussed is that uh, there are two types of moral relativism. There can be an agent and appraiser moral relativism, and there can be moderate and extreme moral relativism. So what is an agent moral relativism? Agent moral relativism is nothing but where the right and the wrong is totally dependent on the moral framework of the person who is performing the action, who is the agent basically. So, uh, a person from culture A arranging a marriage is acting morally right for them, but a person from culture B doing the same might be acting morally wrong for them. So, morality is basically relative to the actor's moral system. So, the focus is on the right for the one who is doing the right, for the one who is engaging in that action. And appraiser, the second part of it, the appraiser moral relativism is nothing but where the moral right or wrong will depend on the moral framework of the person who is judging the action, the appraiser. So basically, the how we term an action, whether it is right or wrong, will totally depend on who is evaluating it. It's just as simple as that. So morality is basically relative to the judge's moral system. Right and wrong according to the judge is what we are seeing in the appraiser moral relativism. Now when we come to moderate, I'm so sorry, when we come to moderate and extreme moral relativism, it's basically when we talk about moderate moral relativism, the moral values according to this vary across cultures and societies, but there might be the existence of certain universal or nearly universal principles. So basically we acknowledge that yes, there might be some basic moral principles that are universal, but again the values will vary across cultures and societies. On the other hand, in case of extreme moral relativism, the entire framework goes like all morality is relative. There cannot be any existence of any universal moral truths at all. So that's the focus. So if a culture believes something is right, it is right for them. It cannot be right for everyone according to this particular moral relativism. Now, hopping on to the next part, which is again very crucial in its sense, because role of conscience and character in the context of understanding moral science for engineers is again one important thing to be noted. What is conscience? Conscience basically it acts as a moral compass for engaging in what can be good or bad depending on the context again. Over here, whatever is the thought, whatever is the action, these are totally context dependent. We are all social beings and we are embedded within the larger context. So it's like if you refer to the Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, you'll understand how a person acts as a nesting, there is a particular concept of nesting doll. So basically the the individual is nested within an entire system of the microsystem or the macro system or the exosystem or the chronosystem. So the individual is rooted, the individual is contextually uh, there, present somewhere. So whatever will go bad or good will be dependent somewhere on the context, and our conscience will be a moral compass for engaging in what can be bad or good or neutral, let's say, depending on that particular context. So it is very important for ethical decisions, safety practices, going against unethical practices for that matter, collaboration purposes, as well as leadership. Now, according to the values in action classification, which was given by Seligman and Peterson 2004, There are actually 24 character strengths and 6 core virtues, which is important for this discussion. So these are particularly, firstly, we come across wisdom and knowledge. Under wisdom and knowledge, we find the character strengths of creativity, curiosity, judgment, love of learning, perspective or perspective taking, as you might say. The second one is courage, under which the character strengths of bravery, perseverance, honesty, and zest comes in. Under the virtue of humanity, we find the character strengths of love, kindness, and social intelligence. Under the virtue of justice, obviously, teamwork, fairness, and leadership are the important things, are the important character strengths which we might consider. Next, temperance. Under temperance, we might find forgiveness, humility, prudence, and self regulation, which are important character strengths in all regard. Lastly, transcendence is the last virtue under which we find the important character strengths of appreciation of beauty and excellence, gratitude, hope, humor, and spirituality. So, all of these 24 character strengths are important because all of this has its own way of influencing the morality or the ethical behavior or the ethical standards of the person engaging in any action, or the person navigating their life with their work or in their personal life. Going on, uh, we have to also understand that there is the importance of moral leadership as well as ethical decision making. Now, decision making can happen in various forms. There can be tactile decisions, there can be operational decisions, there can be other forms of decisions which require ethical considerations for that matter. So, moral leadership is 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 important because if we are not being moral as a leader, then we might not be leaders at all for that matter. Because leaders have to be moral from the aspect of giving equal representation, being being a good guide, as well as being transformational in the sense that everybody has that scope of encouraging or nourishing their personal growth, or like nourishing the nutrients that they have. The nutrients over here means their capacities, their creativity, their potentiality, which has to be nourished under the leader in charge. So the leader has a very important ethical guard on this aspect. So what are some of the ways of developing ethical leadership practices? Of course, the key characteristics will include integrity, which is both personal as well as professional integrity. Transparency is again very important, because if the leader is not being transparent, if the leader is not having transparent communication, or for that matter, if the leader is not giving any transparent um, informational exchange, then the leader is actually not being ethical from many angles. Then, coming to accountability is absolutely important. Then, we of course come to empathy, and lastly, self recognition and emotional intelligence. Because emotional intelligence not only includes understanding your own emotions, but it also includes understanding the other's emotion, as well as regulating your own emotion. And empathy not only entails a particular affective component, it rather entails another cognitive component, which many do not pay heed to or pay attention to. So empathy has to be understood in the way someone not only steps in someone else's shoes emotionally but also rationally. Both of the components are really important. So the some of the strategies to foster ethical leadership principles and decision making are, of course, through training programs, which can be like junior training programs, or like the seniors who are conducting the training programs in the work level, or maybe some, if considered from the university perspective, it might be certain student development programs, or it's a popular practice of having faculty development programs. Just like that, student development programs for engineers can be helpful. So open communication is again very important. Offering a neutral platform, I'm very sorry. So neutral platform, which means that everybody is included, there is respect for diversity, and no one is marginalized or discriminated on the basis of age, race, caste, sex, or their gender orientation or their sexual orientation, etc., etc., etc. So all of the social identity parameters has to be given equal importance too, because after all, we are developing a system for humans to navigate their lives in a more ethical manner. Next is achieving consensus is very important while being an ethical leader, as well as um, initiating ethical decision making, and also achieving convenience. So it's like the focus should also be on achieving what is convenient for all, what can be convenient for all, rather than what can be convenient for a particular group, because in that way there can be an unwanted introduction of hierarchy, which is not a safe thing to engage into. The three things that which are also important while talking about moral science for engineers is that groupthink, peer pressure, and ethical fading. What are the three things? Groupthink is basically it's a social psychology topic which was advanced by Irving Janis in the year 1972, which suggests that group process. It's basically a group process wherein high group cohesiveness leads to erroneous or dangerous decision making. Now, why does this happen? It might be that the group members have high level of cohesiveness or a V feeling, which leads to in-group, out-group differences, and it further um, leads to or it rather propagates more stereotype, and it might lead to certain very risky decisions that might not only be harmful to the individual but personally, but also at the group level. So it's like nobody can say no to each other in that particular group. Everybody is conforming to one particular decision, and because nobody wants to go in the direction opposite to what all of the group members are agreeing on. So that is rather a very dangerous practice, and if it is engaged by an engineer, let's say in a workplace, or maybe in any kind of project or any team development program, etc., it can be not only dangerous for their own professional integrity, but also it will be dangerous for their personal integrity, because sometimes in groupthink we might go against what is moral for us. It might happen that what we are considering moral from one perspective, from our individual perspective, is totally being contradicted by what the group is thinking as a whole. So that is one practice, so that is one thing that we need to pay attention to, and it's like a big caution. So the next thing, without a doubt, is peer pressure. Peer pressure Of course, it hampers morality on at times, and again, it can also advance morality at times, because peer pressure, not all peer pressure is considered to be positive, to be negative. It might be positive as well. However, in many of the situations, it has been encountered that the statistics for negative has rather, you know taken has overthrown the positive side. So it hampers morality at times because of the pressure to adhere to group norms, or in other words, conforming to the norms which have been established by the group or the peers, is something that can not only be emotionally charging, but also cognitively charging, and also morally charging, and for that matter socially charging. So it might happen that your peers want you to do certain things, but you do not want to do it, but you have to do it, kind of. Because there is this particular conformity that you are getting into, so there is a social influence. So this again is something that is a dangerous practice, and one needs to be cautioned against. The last thing over here in this slide is ethical fading. Now, what is ethical fading is that it is explained as a process by which the ethical dimensions of a decision are removed, or it actually fades from perception, causing people to not see the ethical implications at all. So it's like a very dangerous practice that happens in corporate cultures, um, where the entire ethical dimension, it might happen as a kind of, it might start from a very uh, simple thing, but it might lead to a bigger thing in the later part, where people do not even see the ethical implications of what is happening. So it's like a slippery slope that it takes at last. So the ethical dimensions of a decision are totally removed, and it happens in very micro doses. It's like microdosing. It happens uh, from the level of a microdose to a very macro level, and it happens more in corporate culture. Uh, for that matter, in every workplace, but it is statistically higher in corporate culture. Um, Now, coming to karma yoga, or work as worship. Now, this is something that yoga itself talks about, uh, that work has to be nishkama karma. Nishkama karma, which means desireless action, where you do not have any intention or desire of, or any kind of expectation regarding what will be present as a result of your work, or as a consequence of your work. So you're engaging in the work for the entirety of it, for the truthfulness of it, not just for reaping the results of your work. That is one important implication of karma yoga. Another thing is that action without attachment. So it's very much common that we get attached to certain, to for that matter, if you might remember, that in your school days, or while you're visiting college, etc., you used to have a favorite chair of yours where you used to hop in, you used to sit, and the moment somebody else comes to sit on it, you feel like, someone is stepping on my personal space. It's because you have a kind of attachment developed. You have a kind of attachment with that chair, that you, as if you own that chair. But there is no label on the chair at all. Nobody told you that this is your chair, but you chose it. So it's like you have a kind of attachment to it. So it happens that in our everyday lives, we get attached to certain things let's say, objects or situations, which again brings in a lot of suffering, which brings a lot of pain, or it might also bring pleasure. So over here, karma yoga focuses on action without attachment. So basically, you have to perform a particular thing without getting attached to it, in order to maintain integrity in your work and in your spiritual life. The next one is work as worship, where you are uh, performing work without, again, the nishkama karma concept, where you are not performing the work because of the consequences, but because you want to uh, actually intrinsically get involved with it. Then the focus on duty or dharma. So basically, you have to focus on performing the work as it is. You have to perform the particular duty which has been imposed on you, without any deceptive method, without getting into any methods of deception, by being completely truthful, honest, and maintaining professionalism as well as integrity with your um, with in your personal as well as your professional life. And lastly, the surrender of ego. Now over here, ego is referring to the I which you have. So basically, if you are always focused on I will become this or I will become that, that I have to climb up this corporate ladder, or I have to reach the highest seat in this particular management, um that is where the entire, again, loop of not engaging in nishkama karma comes in, where you are kind of working for hopping on the ladder which you have created as a goal in your life. So there is the importance of surrendering your I, the importance of surrendering that I am this or I want to become this. Rather, the focus on I am doing this for the entirety of it, enjoying the work as it is important for, um, from the perspective of karma yoga, firstly, and secondly, from the perspective of maintaining a morally and emotionally, as well as psychologically, a very peaceful work life balance, as well as engaging in work in the most mindful and meaningful manner possible. Now, the last thing that has to be discussed, of course, is how do we cultivate moral courage, resilience in our professional life. Of course, cultivating moral courage does not happen in a blink of a second. It is a matter of everyday practice, it is a matter of engaging in everyday discipline, in changing certain small things that we engage in our everyday lives. And resilience is, to define resilience, we have to say that it means how we bounce off atrocities, how we bounce back from the face of atrocities, or from the face of certain difficult or challenging situations in our life. So when we are trying to cultivate or develop moral courage and resilience in our professional life, these 10 points are some of the points from the exhaustive list which might be helpful. Time management, of course. Focusing on, often we get into the loop of procrastination. Often we get into the loop of not performing the work, or sometimes actually we lose the flow of the work, and it happens that, because of the digital age, there is the occurrence of doom scrolling, and we lose track of time, how it goes, and there is this endless loop of not completing the goals within time. Now this is where time management comes in, where the focus is not only on doing things within time, but also on how the things can be done in a very precise, systematic, and a time effective manner. That is what is to be learned with practice every day. So, over here in this regard, the Stephen Covey's matrix of time management can be really helpful. So, you all can check it out in the you can type it out on Google, and you will definitely get the matrix. And if you actually engage in developing the writing what are the important things according to the matrix, you might get one way of how to engage yourself in time management properly. Next is self regulation. Self regulation is something which not only means personal life regulation but also for professional life regulation, social life regulation. So, so in order to achieve self regulation, there has to be a lot of things that needs to be done. There has to be the enhancement of self efficacy, there has to be the enhancement of self confidence, esteem, and the overall self identity which comes in as we discuss self regulation. So self regulation will also entail talking about how to achieve control over the things that we do not have control, or like, or to restate it, it's like how to achieve emotional control over what cannot be physically controlled by us. This is also another thing that comes under self regulation. And over here, important concepts, as I already talked about, self efficacy, self esteem, and someone's identity, self identity, all of the important, or all of these are important variables while we discuss about self regulation. The next one is stress management. Stress management in the face of atrocities or any kind of big stressor or small stressor, whatever it might be, um, the appraisal of whether the situation is threat or a harm or like of loss or of danger is important. And of course the secondary appraisal of someone's coping repertoire, what they have as their coping resources, are overall important in how the person manages their stress. And coping styles can be of different types. It can be emotion focused, it can be problem focused. So depending on someone's predominant coping style, they will be able to manage stress. Not only does stress management entail coping styles, but it also entails few other important, often considered miscellaneous things, which are exercise, diet, sleep quality, etc. So, stress management via all of these methods can be really helpful for increasing, for cultivating moral courage as well as resilience in our professional lives. The next thing is, of course, cultivating a positive mindset. The next line to this is also working with purpose, because working without purpose is aimless. And in that case, if there is no clear aim in hand, the work itself is discredited because of its lack of directionality. So all of this is important. The sixth one is mindfulness, of course. We often live in the perpetual state of mindlessness, where we forget, where we actually do things on an in a very automatic mode, which ruins the entire experience as a whole. We do not experience the things as it is. So, being mindful, mindful eating, mindful watching, mindful walking, these are some of the exercises that one can engage themselves in. Other than that, mindfulness meditation is also something which has gained prominence for reduction of stress and also alleviating various psychological problems that are faced by people as a whole. The seventh point is maintaining integrity in terms of values and ethics. I don't think I need to uh, explain or get into the discussion of this more because this has already been discussed. Cognitive flexibility, being the eighth point, is really important. Why? Because without cognitive flexibility, without being flexible in terms of developing alternative solutions to problems, or maybe switching plans, or task shifting, etc., people cannot really uh, develop resilience, or neither they can uh, develop moral courage for that matter. Because in face of, let's say, any danger or any stressful situation, if they are not flexible enough to move from the rigid patterns of behaving, then it might happen that they cannot really move past that stressful situation. They might get stuck. So that is why cognitive flexibility can be very important. The ninth point is practicing empathy. Now, as I had already discussed, that empathy not only entails the emotion part but also the cognitive part. So, being empathetic to someone emotionally as well as cognitively is what expected in the professional life as well, and also in the personal life, without a doubt. And lastly, listening and communicating clearly are some of the it's actually a very important point, because without listening clearly, communication will totally fail. And in terms of communication, getting a feedback is very important as a practice. Giving as well as receiving feedback is an important practice in this regard. So these are some of the uh, ways in which engineers as well as the larger public can cultivate moral courage and resilience in their professional lives. These were some of the references from which I have uh, actually developed the PPT. And other than that, some of the slides were narrated, or rather written by me, dependent on whatever examples I could give. So I hope this was clear. And for any kind of problem with the presentation or any kind of concept clarity, you may reach out to me uh, uh, in the UEM campus. So that's it. Thank you.